Jeanette Stevens had 30 seconds to decide if she was willing to die for a man she'd never spoken to. The note trembled in her hand, already written, already folded. Your wife set a trap. Leave now. 7 words that would either save Francesco Mancini's life or end hers in a federal crossfire. Because the elegant woman sitting across from him, his wife of 5 years, the woman gazing at him with perfect adoration, had orchestrated every detail of his destruction. 2 days ago, Jeanette had been hiding in a restroom stall when Maria Mancini's voice shattered the silence like breaking glass. Everything's in place. When you move in, he'll have nowhere to run. The anniversary dinner was perfect, he suspects nothing. Francesco Mancini's empire ends tonight, and I'll be there to watch him realize I was the architect of his destruction the entire time. The bathroom door had closed. Heels clicked away on marble, and Jeanette had stood there with her hand pressed against her mouth, knowing she'd just heard a wife sentence her husband to annihilation. Now the trap was set. Galileo's Ristorante looked like an upscale Italian dream, crystal chandeliers casting golden light, soft jazz playing, expensive wine flowing. But Jeanette saw what Francesco couldn't, the 4 diners who hadn't touched their food in 30 minutes, eyes locked on table 12 with predatory focus. The security cameras repositioned since her shift started, all angled toward one target. The kitchen staff she'd never seen before, moving with military precision instead of chef's chaos. The woman at the bar nursing the same Manhattan for over an hour, her hand never far from the briefcase at her feet. Federal agents, everywhere, waiting, and Francesco Mancini sat in the center of it all like a king in his castle, completely unaware that his wife had built his throne on a trapdoor. Jeanette's heart hammered so violently she thought it might crack through her ribs. She was a waitress. Invisible. A nobody who served risotto and espresso and cleaned up other people's messes. Her younger sister Keisha needed her alive, needed her employed, needed her to keep her head down and mind her own business. But her hand was already moving, placing the folded receipt on her tray beneath Francesco's espresso cup. She crossed the dining room on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Table 12. Francesco Mancini in his charcoal suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. Maria Mancini in her crimson dress, diamonds at her throat, performing the role of devoted wife with Oscar-worthy precision. Your espresso, sir. Jeanette's voice came out steady despite the earthquake inside her chest. She placed the cup down. The receipt slid beneath the saucer, barely visible. Francesco's eyes lifted to her face. They were the color of smoke, and just as impossible to read, cold, calculating, seeing too much. For a terrifying moment, she thought he might dismiss her entirely, might leave the note untouched while federal agents closed their net. Then his fingers moved with casual elegance, lifting the saucer, unfolding the paper beneath the table's edge where cameras couldn't see. She watched his expression change. Not panic, men like him didn't panic. Not fear, he'd probably forgotten what fear felt like. Something far more dangerous. The civilized mask cracked just enough to reveal the predator underneath. He saw it now. Everything she'd seen. The wrong kind of silence pressing against the walls, the watchers pretending not to watch. The trap tightening around him like a noose. His gaze returned to Maria, who laughed at something, touched his hand, her performance absolutely flawless. Francesco placed his napkin beside his plate with deliberate care. He stood, bending to kiss Maria's temple with tenderness that would break hearts. I need to take a call, amore. Business never sleeps. You know how it is. He walked toward the kitchen corridor, not the front entrance where agents would be waiting. Jeanette's lungs forgot how to work. 15 seconds passed. 20, 30. Then the world detonated. Federal agents. Nobody move. The shout came from everywhere at once. The fake diners were on their feet, badges and weapons materializing from nowhere. The entrance doors crashed inward and tactical agents in full gear flooded the dining room. Automatic weapons raised, voices overlapping into chaos that shattered the elegant atmosphere like a grenade through glass. Customers screamed, chairs toppled, crystal shattered against marble. And Maria Mancini was screaming too. Her hands raised, her face a perfect mask of terror, as she played the terrified victim for an audience of federal law enforcement. But her eyes, for just a fraction of a second, found Jeanette's across the chaos. The hatred in that look was pure enough to kill. A hand clamped around Jeanette's wrist and yanked her backward through the kitchen doors with enough force to dislocate her shoulder. Francesco moved like controlled violence, dragging her past screaming chefs and federal agents, through the prep station, toward the back exit. Keep moving, he said, his voice deadly calm. Don't look back. They hit the alley at a dead run. Freezing night air, A black SUV with tinted windows, engine already running. Francesco shoved her inside and the vehicle was moving before her door closed, tires screaming as they accelerated away from the chaos. Through the rear window, Jeanette watched Galileo's disappear behind them, federal vehicles, news cameras, strobing lights painting the night in blue and red. And there, visible through the restaurant windows, was Maria Mancini talking to agents, gesturing toward the kitchen, her body language perfectly calibrated. Vulnerable but brave, shaken but composed. Jeanette could read her lips even from this distance. He took one of the staff, a waitress. I think she's been helping him. Oh God, Jeanette whispered. She's going to make me look like your accomplice. Francesco's expression was carved from ice and fury. She already has. That's when Jeanette realized the note she'd written to save a stranger's life had just painted a target on her own back that would never disappear. Will Jeanette survive the choice she just made? Can she clear her name before Maria destroys her completely? If you want to find out what happens next, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. And if you're already hooked on this one, drop a comment below and let me know. Should Jeanette have written that note? Or was helping Francesco the biggest mistake of her life? Now, let's rewind 20 minutes to see exactly how Jeanette spotted the trap that everyone else missed. The 20 minutes before Jeanette wrote that note, the restaurant had felt wrong in a way she couldn't name. She'd worked at Galileo's long enough to know its rhythms, the soft murmur of power brokers making deals over Barolo, the delicate clink of crystal, the occasional burst of laughter from couples celebrating milestones. But tonight, something was off, discordant, like a symphony where half the musicians were playing from the wrong sheet music. Jeanette refilled water glasses at table 7, her movements automatic, but her attention kept snagging on details that didn't fit. The man in the corner booth, expensive suit, Wall Street haircut, posture too rigid for someone supposedly relaxing over dinner. His branzino sat untouched, getting cold, while his eyes tracked table 12 with mechanical regularity. Every 45 seconds, like clockwork. Across the room, another solo diner, navy blazer, loosened tie, the appearance of a businessman unwinding after a long day. Except he hadn't lifted his fork once in 20 minutes. His attention kept drifting to Francesco Mancini's table, with the kind of focus that had nothing to do with admiration. The kitchen door swung open, and Jeanette caught sight of the new prep cook Salvatore claimed to have hired that morning. But the man moved wrong shoulders square, spine straight, eyes scanning the dining room like he was doing reconnaissance instead of prepping antipasti. She'd seen that body language before, years ago when federal agents had raided the restaurant 3 blocks over. Military training left marks on how people moved, and this man wore those marks like a second skin. Her gaze traveled upward. The security cameras had been repositioned. She'd noticed immediately when her shift started. All of them angled toward table 12 now, creating overlapping coverage that would capture every angle, every word, every gesture. Professional surveillance, the kind that came with warrants and tactical planning. Then, there was the woman at the bar. Navy suit, severe bun, nursing, the same Manhattan she'd ordered 90 minutes ago. Her hand kept drifting to the briefcase at her feet like she was checking that something was still there. Something important. Federal agents. That's what they were. Jeanette would bet her life on it. And Francesco Mancini sat in the center of their web, completely oblivious, smiling at his wife like she hadn't spent years setting this trap. 2 days ago. The restroom. The memory hit Jeanette like ice water down her spine. She'd been in the furthest stall, wrestling with a broken clasp on her apron, when heels had clicked across marble tile. Maria Mancini's voice, low and controlled, had cut through the silence with surgical precision. Everything's in place. When you move in, he'll have nowhere to run. The anniversary dinner was perfect. He suspects nothing. Francesco Mancini's empire ends tonight, and I'll be there to watch him realize I was the architect of his destruction the entire time. A pause. Then, no, I won't be in danger. I'm the victim, remember? The abused wife who finally found the courage to cooperate with authorities. They'll protect me. They have to. Another pause. Maria's laugh had been cold enough to freeze bone. 5 years of playing house with a monster. But it was worth it. Every second was worth it to watch his world burn. The bathroom door had closed. The click of heels faded. And Jeanette had stood there, barely breathing, her hands shaking so badly she could hardly unlock the stall door. She'd wanted to believe she'd misunderstood, that Maria was talking about someone else, some other Francesco Mancini, in some other restaurant on some other night. But now, Watching the agents position themselves, watching Maria perform affection with surgical precision, Jeanette knew exactly what she'd heard. A wife orchestrating her husband's destruction. And Jeanette had maybe 10 minutes before the raid began. She stood at the server station, a blank receipt in her trembling hands. Francesco Mancini sat 20 feet away, completely unaware that every person in this restaurant except him knew exactly how this night would end. Her hand moved almost without conscious thought, scrawling 7 words in handwriting that shook so badly it was barely legible. Your wife set a trap. Leave now. She folded it with numb fingers, placed it on her tray beneath his espresso cup, and started walking. 30 seconds to decide if she was willing to die for a stranger. She was already halfway across the dining room before she realized she'd made her choice. Francesco's fingers were steady as he unfolded the receipt, his expression remaining perfectly neutral. But Jeanette saw the moment the words registered, a microscopic tightening around his eyes, a stillness that settled over him like a predator scenting danger. She'd already turned away, arranging wine glasses at the server station, with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, but her peripheral vision stayed locked on table 12. 3 heartbeats. 4. 5. Then Francesco's gaze swept the dining room with new awareness, and Jeanette watched him see what she'd seen. The fake diners with their untouched food, the repositioned cameras, the woman at the bar, the kitchen staff who moved like soldiers instead of chefs. His eyes returned to Maria, and something fundamental shifted in his expression. He was looking at his wife the way a demolitions expert looks at a bomb, with the cold calculation of someone reassessing everything they thought they knew. Maria laughed at something, touched his hand across the table, completely unaware that her 5-year performance had just been exposed in 7 words on a receipt. Amore, Francesco said, his voice carrying perfect warmth, perfect regret. I'm so sorry, but I need to take a call. Business crisis that can't wait. He stood with unhurried grace, pressing a kiss to her temple that would have convinced anyone watching that he was simply a devoted husband stepping away for work. But his eyes found Jeanette's for half a second, a look so brief anyone else would have missed it. Follow. Now. Then he was walking toward the kitchen corridor, his pace measured and calm, giving no indication that anything had changed. Jeanette grabbed an empty tray and moved after him, her heart trying to crack through her ribs. She'd taken maybe 3 steps when hell broke loose. Federal agents, everyone on the ground now. The man with the branzino was on his feet, weapon drawn, badge held high. Across the room, the Wall Street diner was doing the same. The kitchen doors crashed open, and tactical agents in full gear poured through like a black tide, assault rifles raised, laser sights cutting through the restaurant's golden ambiance. The front entrance shattered inward. More agents, bulletproof vests, helmets, voices shouting commands that overlapped into incomprehensible noise. Customers screamed. A woman overturned her table trying to get down. Crystal glasses exploded against marble tile. A waiter dropped an entire tray of entrees with a crash that echoed like gunfire. And in the center of the chaos, Maria Mancini was screaming too, her hands raised, her face a masterpiece of terror as she played the role she'd been rehearsing for 5 years. The terrified wife. The victim. The woman who'd barely escaped her husband's criminal empire with her life. But her eyes for just one unguarded second locked onto Jeanette's across the chaos. Recognition. Understanding. Rage compressed into something that looked like murder distilled into human form. Then a hand clamped around Jeanette's wrist with bruising force and yanked her backward through the kitchen doors. Francesco moved like controlled violence given human form. He dragged Jeanette through the kitchen past screaming chefs, overturned stockpots, federal agents who were too focused on securing the dining room to notice 2 people disappearing through the prep station. His grip on her wrist was iron, his pace relentless, giving her no choice but to run or be dragged. "Don't stop," he said, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos erupting behind them. "Don't look back. Don't hesitate." They hit the back corridor at a dead run. Emergency exit ahead, industrial steel painted red, the kind of door that was only supposed to open during fires. Francesco slammed into it with his shoulder, and it gave way like it was made of cardboard, alarm shrieking as they burst into the alley. Freezing night air hit Jeanette's lungs like a punch. Her thin server's blouse did nothing against the cold, but Francesco was already pulling her toward a black SUV, idling 10 feet away. Windows tinted illegal dark, engine purring with barely contained power. The driver's door opened, and a man emerged mid-40s, built like he bench-pressed motorcycles for fun, wearing a suit that couldn't hide the weapon holstered under his jacket. "Boss." His voice was clipped, professional. "Situation? Compromised. Full extraction." Francesco's hand was still locked around Jeanette's wrist. "Move. Now." The driver yanked open the rear door. Francesco shoved Jeanette inside with enough force that she sprawled across leather seats that smelled like expensive cologne and gun oil. He slid in beside her. The door slammed shut with the heavy thunk of armored plating. The driver was already moving before Francesco's seatbelt clicked, tires screaming as they accelerated out of the alley with the kind of precision that spoke to extensive tactical training. Jeanette twisted in her seat, looking back through the tinted rear window. Galileo's Ristorante was lit up like a stage set. Federal vehicles surrounded the building, their lights painting the night in strobing blue and red. News vans were already arriving, cameras deploying, reporters materializing like sharks scenting blood. And there, visible through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, was Maria Mancini. She was talking to someone in a federal jacket, her body language perfectly calibrated, vulnerable but brave, shaken but composed. The performance of a woman who'd barely escaped something terrible. Jeanette watched her gesture toward the kitchen, toward the direction they'd disappeared. And even from this distance, she could read Maria's lips forming the words that would rewrite the entire narrative. He took one of the staff. "A waitress. I think she's been helping him all along." The full weight of what she'd done crashed down on Jeanette like a building collapsing. "Oh God," she whispered. "She's going to frame me as your accomplice." Francesco's expression was carved from ice and barely controlled fury. "She already has." Jeanette's hand started shaking. "I was trying to save your life. I know." His voice was flat, emotionless. "And Maria just weaponized your conscience against you." The SUV merged onto the highway, disappearing into traffic, leaving behind the chaos and the federal raid and the life Jeanette had lived just 2 hours ago. She looked down at her hands, still trembling, still smelling faintly of espresso and the perfume of wealthy diners who'd never remember her name. 2 hours ago, she'd been invisible. A waitress serving risotto to people who looked through her like she was furniture. Now her face would be on every news channel in the country. Federal target, criminal accomplice, fugitive. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Francesco's jaw tightened. "Now we find out exactly who my wife really is. And then we destroy her before she destroys us." The compound materialized out of darkness like something from another world. High stone walls topped with security cameras, iron gates that opened silently despite looking heavy enough to stop a tank. The SUV rolled through into a circular driveway where fountain water caught moonlight, the main house rising 3 stories of old-world architecture that probably cost more than Jeanette would earn in multiple lifetimes. She'd stopped asking questions 20 minutes ago when they'd left the city limits. Her brain had simply shut down everything except basic survival instinct, leaving her numb and hollow and strangely detached from her own body. Francesco led her through double doors into an entrance hall that belonged in European palaces. Marble floors, Renaissance paintings. A chandelier that could have funded Keisha's entire college education. But he didn't slow down, just kept moving deeper into the house until they reached a private office, mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, windows overlooking gardens, shrouded in darkness. A man was already waiting inside, late 40s, military bearing. Scar tissue running along his jawline that spoke to a history of violence survived. He stood when Francesco entered, his expression grim. "Dante," Francesco said, and Jeanette heard exhaustion beneath the control for the first time. "Tell me you have something." Dante Russo, the name fit the man. All hard edges and controlled lethality placed a manila folder on the desk. "Everything we could pull in 30 minutes. It's worse than we thought." Francesco opened the folder, and Jeanette watched his face transform into something that looked like controlled devastation. He said nothing for a long moment, just read with the kind of focus that suggested he was memorizing every word, cataloging evidence of his own destruction. "Her real name is Maria Calvetti," Dante said quietly. "Salvatore Calvetti's youngest daughter." The name meant nothing to Jeanette, but Francesco's hands tightened on the folder edge. "We confirmed it through fingerprint analysis from a wine glass she touched at dinner 2 weeks ago," Dante continued. "Been running background checks since then because something felt off about her charity connections. She was planted in your life 5 years ago. The chance meeting at the art gallery in Florence was choreographed. Everything since then has been operational tradecraft." Francesco's voice came out barely above a whisper. 5 years. 5 years of intelligence gathering," Dante confirmed. "She's been feeding the FBI details on your financial networks, shipping routes, political contacts. Tonight wasn't just about arresting you, it was about dismantling the entire infrastructure. We're getting reports of simultaneous raids in 4 cities. Associates arrested. Operations shut down. It's coordinated. Francesco closed the folder with careful precision, like he was trying very hard not to destroy something. When he looked up, his eyes held something Jeanette had never seen. In another human being, rage so pure and cold, it looked like physics instead of emotion. She turned our marriage into a reconnaissance mission, he said. Every conversation, every intimate moment, 5 years of intelligence gathering while I slept beside her. He turned to Jeanette, and she saw him truly looking at her for the first time since the alley. You saved me from a woman I loved. Do you understand what that means? Jeanette's voice came out steadier than she expected. It means she's going to want both of us dead. Yes, Francesco said simply. It does. Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. The media narrative is already set. Maria gave an interview to Channel 7 from the restaurant. She's claiming you held her hostage for 5 years, that she finally found the courage to cooperate with federal authorities, and that, he looked at Jeanette, that Miss Stevens has been your accomplice for months, possibly your mistress, and helped you escape justice tonight. The room tilted slightly. Jeanette's legs forgot how to hold her weight, and she sank into the nearest chair. I'm a waitress, she whispered. I serve espresso. I split tips with the busboys. 6 hours ago, my biggest problem was whether I could cover next month's rent. 6 hours ago, you were invisible, Francesco said, not unkindly. Now you're the second most wanted person in this state. Jeanette looked up at him. What happens to me? That, Francesco said quietly, depends on what you want to happen. Francesco poured whiskey from a crystal decanter, sliding one glass across the desk toward Jeanette. She wrapped her hands around it, needing something to hold on to. You have 2 options, he said, his tone matter-of-fact. The first is simple. I give you a new identity, fully documented, completely clean. European passport, bank account, apartment in Lyon, paid for 3 years. You disappear tonight. By morning, Jeanette Stevens becomes a ghost, and someone named Janine Moreau starts a new life in France. He opened a drawer and placed a burgundy passport on the desk. Jeanette's photo was inside, but the name read Janine Moreau, complete with entry stamps and a believable history. The fantasy was almost painful in its appeal. Vanish. Start over. Drink wine in French cafes, and pretend tonight never happened. Then she thought about Keisha. What's the second option? She asked quietly. You stay. We find Maria. We expose what she's done. We clear your name and destroy hers. Francesco's expression was unreadable, but understand the Calvetti family will want you eliminated before you can testify. The FBI will hunt you as a fugitive. Maria will use every media connection she has to paint you as a criminal. And there's a very real possibility you'll end up dead or in federal prison. Jeanette took her first sip of whiskey. It burned going down, but she welcomed the heat. If I run, she said slowly, what happens to my sister? Francesco's eyebrow lifted fractionally. Your sister? Keisha. Sophomore at Columbia. Full academic scholarship. She's brilliant. Wants to be a civil rights attorney. Actually has the grades and the drive to do it. Jeanette's voice hardened. If I disappear, if I become a fugitive, the federal investigation follows me. They'll tear apart her life looking for connections. They'll question her, surveil her, make her a suspect. And when the scholarship board sees her sister named in a federal Mafia case, they'll pull her funding so fast she won't have time to pack her dorm room. She pushed the passport back across the desk. Running makes me look guilty. It confirms Maria's story, and it destroys my sister's future. Francesco studied her with the kind of focus that felt like being dissected. So you're proposing what, exactly? That you walk into a federal building and hope they believe a waitress over a respected philanthropist with prosecutorial connections and 5 years of documented abuse? No. Jeanette leaned forward. I'm proposing we find Maria and make her tell the truth. You said you have resources, intelligence networks. Use them. In exchange for what? Protection for Keisha. 24-hour security until this is over. Make sure the Calvetti family knows she's untouchable, that hurting her brings consequences they can't survive. Jeanette met his eyes without flinching. You said I saved your empire. This is the price. Dante, still standing by the window, made a sound that might have been approval. Francesco's expression was unreadable for a long moment. Then something that looked like respect flickered across his face. You're either very brave or completely insane. Right now, Jeanette said. I'm both. Do we have a deal? Francesco extended his hand across the desk. Jeanette shook it, feeling the moment crystallize into something permanent. We have a deal, Francesco said. But understand something, Maria Calvetti has spent 5 years building her cover. She's trained, connected, and protected. Taking her down won't be clean, and it won't be easy. I don't need easy, Jeanette said quietly. I need my sister safe, and my name cleared. Everything else is negotiable. Francesco's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Then let's go to war. The television screen lit up Francesco's office with the cold glow of primetime news, and there was Maria Calvetti, no longer pretending to be Maria Mancini, sitting across from one of the country's most trusted journalists. Her face a masterpiece of calculated vulnerability. Minimal makeup, red-rimmed eyes, tears tracking down her cheeks with perfect timing. A conservative pale blue dress that screamed victim without saying a word. For 5 years, I lived in fear, Maria said, her voice breaking at exactly the right moment. Francesco Mancini is a master manipulator. He controlled every aspect of my life, who I spoke to, where I went, what I wore. I was a prisoner in a beautiful cage. The journalist leaned forward with practiced sympathy. What finally gave you the courage to come forward? I couldn't let him hurt anyone else. Maria's hand trembled as she reached for a tissue. When I discovered the true extent of his criminal empire, the violence, the corruption, I knew I had a moral obligation to cooperate with federal authorities, even though I knew it would put my life at risk. The screen cut to surveillance footage, grainy shots of Francesco and Jeanette fleeing through the kitchen, deliberately framed to look sinister. The chyron beneath read, Mafia boss escapes federal raid with accomplice. This woman, Maria continued, and Jeanette's employee ID photo filled the screen, pixelated, unflattering, made to look criminal through nothing more than context and framing. Jeanette Stevens. She's been helping Francesco for months, possibly longer. She orchestrated his escape tonight, endangering federal agents and allowing a dangerous criminal to evade justice. Dante muted the television, his expression disgusted. She's good. She's been trained for this, Francesco said, his voice ice. Every tear is calculated. Every word is crafted to build sympathy while destroying us. Jeanette couldn't look away from her own face on the screen, now shown in a split image next to Francesco's like they were Bonnie and Clyde. The narrative was already set. Mob boss and his loyal accomplice. Dangerous. On the run. Her phone buzzed. Keisha's name lit up the screen. Jeanette's hands shook as she answered. Keisha. They came to the apartment. Her sister's voice was high and terrified, words tumbling over each other. Federal agents with guns and badges, and they asked where you were. If I knew about your criminal activities. If you'd contacted me. They searched my room, Jeanette. They went through my laptop, my phone, everything. A sob cut through the words. What the hell is happening? Why is your face on the news next to a mafia boss? Listen to me very carefully. Jeanette forced her voice steady. Everything they're saying is a lie. I witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see, and now dangerous people are trying to silence me. Witnessed what? I can't explain right now. But I need you to do exactly what I say. Pack a bag, just essentials. Someone named Victor is going to come get you within the hour. 6'4", bald, scar on his left hand. He'll say, your sister sent me. You go with him, Keisha. You don't talk to any more federal agents without a lawyer. You don't speak to reporters. You trust no one except Victor until I tell you otherwise. I'm scared. I know, baby, I know. Jeanette's throat tightened. But I'm going to fix this. I promise you. She ended the call and looked at Francesco. His expression told her he'd heard every word. Maria just declared war on everyone I love, Jeanette said quietly. Then we end her, Francesco replied. Tonight. The conference room had transformed into something from a spy thriller. Dante's intelligence team, 5 specialists who looked like they'd stepped out of military backgrounds into expensive suits, worked with mechanical efficiency. Laptops covered the table. Multiple screens displayed everything from bank transfers to satellite imagery to intercepted communications. Francesco stood at the head of the table, his focus absolute, as Dante walked him through evidence compiled in the past 4 hours. Maria's been moving money for 18 months, Dante said, pulling up a web of financial transactions that looked like abstract art rendered in numbers. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency transfers. She systematically bled $43 million from your accounts and funneled it to Calvetti family holdings. Francesco's expression didn't change, but Jeanette saw his hand curl into a fist. She also copied your entire contact database, another analyst added. Political connections, law enforcement sources, financial advisors, everything. She's given the FBI a complete roadmap to dismantle your network. Jeanette sat at the far end of the table, feeling useless among these professionals who spoke in acronyms and operational terminology she barely understood. Her contribution had been 7 words on a receipt. Now she was watching people who did this for a living build a case against a woman who'd spent 5 years perfecting her deception. But while they talked numbers and logistics, Jeanette had asked for something different. Transcripts of every media appearance Maria had made in the past 48 hours. 3 television interviews, 2 radio spots, 1 print interview with a major newspaper. She'd read them all twice, then started a 3rd pass, looking for the pattern she knew had to be there. People under stress revealed themselves in repetition. In the phrases they returned to, the metaphors they couldn't escape. Maria was performing brilliance, but every performance had tells. And then Jeanette found it. I'm finally finding peace in a sanctuary with pearl-white walls and eternal light. The phrase appeared in 2 different interviews, worded almost identically. She pulled up the newspaper interview. There it was again, slightly modified. I've taken refuge in a place of white marble and heavenly serenity. Francesco. Jeanette's voice cut through the operational discussion. She's telling people where she is. The room went silent. Francesco turned to her, eyebrow raised. She keeps mentioning white walls, marble, heavenly imagery, sanctuary. Jeanette stood, walking to the main screen. She's bragging, telling the world she's somewhere safe while playing victim. But part of her wants you to know she won. She's leaving breadcrumbs. Dante was already typing. Luxury residences, white marble, angelic motifs. Seraphim Tower, one of the analysts said, pulling up an image. New luxury building downtown. Penthouses start at $15 million, marketed as heavenly living with white Carrara marble and architectural angel wings in the lobby. The building appeared on screen, sleek, modern, ostentatious. Francesco stared at the image, something predatory settling into his expression. She thinks she's safe there, protected by federal surveillance and media attention. Security is military grade, Dante warned. Any move we make has to be surgical. Jeanette looked at the floor plan now displayed on screen, her mind working through angles and possibilities. Then we don't make a move, she said quietly. We make her confession go viral before she knows what's happening. Francesco's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. I'm listening. The Seraphim Tower's service entrance looked deliberately unremarkable, designed to keep the help invisible from residents who paid millions for the illusion of effortless luxury. Dante's team had acquired maintenance uniforms and forged credentials. Jeanette wore coveralls 2 sizes too large, her hair tucked under a cap, a toolkit containing surveillance equipment slung over her shoulder. Francesco had insisted on coming. Dante had argued operational security, risk of recognition, but Francesco had ended it with 5 words. She was my wife? Dante. Now they moved through service corridors like they belonged. Dante in front, Francesco and Jeanette in the middle, 2 operatives behind. The elevator took them to the 43rd floor without incident. Camera feeds already looped by their technical specialist, running interference from a van 3 blocks away. The penthouse level was silent, carpeted so thick their footsteps made no sound. Dante held up a fist. Stop! He pressed a listening device against Maria's door, his expression focused. Voices filtered through. Multiple people. Maria's distinctive tone, confident and controlled. A male voice, official sounding, precise diction. Another male voice, deeper, Italian accented. Dante pulled back, hand signaling. 3 targets inside. Active conversation. Francesco's jaw tightened. This was the moment. Abort or breach. Francesco nodded once. Go. Dante's lockpick made no sound. The mechanism yielded in under 15 seconds. Then they were moving through the doorway with tactical precision, weapons drawn, except for Jeanette, whose hands clutched the recording device hidden in her toolkit. The penthouse was exactly what Jeanette expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, white marble everywhere, furniture that cost more than cars. And in the living room, 3 people turned toward the intrusion, with varying expressions of shock. Maria Calvetti stood frozen, wine glass halfway to her lips, her face cycling through, surprise to recognition, to rage, compressed into diamond hardness. Beside her, a man in his 50s wearing federal prosecutor's authority. Ellis Brennan, based on the photos. The 3rd man was pure violence, barely contained in expensive tailoring. Nico Salvatore, Calvetti family enforcer. Nobody moves, Dante said, gun trained with professional steadiness. We're just here to talk. Maria's shock transformed into something almost amused. Francesco, How domestic of you to drop by unannounced. Her eyes slid to Jeanette. And you brought the help. How touching. Jeanette's hands were steady as she activated the recording device, LED indicator glowing green, capturing everything. Tell them, Francesco said, his voice carrying 5 years of betrayal. Tell them what you told me in Florence when you thought I was unconscious. Tell them about Salvatore Calvetti and the 5-year operation. Maria's smile was sharp enough to cut. You're bluffing. Am I? Francesco's expression was ice. Or are you realizing that the waitress you underestimated just handed me the location you were foolish enough to broadcast on national television? Maria's eyes snapped to Jeanette. For the first time, fear cracked through the perfect facade. The recording device captured every second. The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. Maria's eyes locked on the recording device in Jeanette's hand, calculating distances, probabilities, scenarios at lethal speed. Nico, she said quietly. Get that device. Now. The enforcer moved like a predator, released pure explosive violence aimed at Jeanette. Training gave way to instinct. Jeanette's hand closed around the crystal decanter on the side table, and she swung with every ounce of desperate strength her body could generate. Crystal connected with Nico's temple. The sound was like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. He dropped like someone cut his strings, blood streaming from the gash above his eye, body hitting white marble with a wet thud. Maria was already moving toward Jeanette, her performance of victim completely abandoned, replaced by something feral. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've done. But Jeanette was faster. Her thumb found the button on her phone connected to Dante's technical specialist, ready to execute the plan they'd built 3 hours ago. She pressed it. Send everything, she said. Maria lunged, but Francesco caught her wrist with brutal efficiency, spinning her against the wall hard enough that her breath expelled in a shocked gasp. Too late, he said. It's already done. 3 blocks away, a specialist with 10 years of NSA experience was executing a digital assault that would be studied in cybersecurity courses for years. Audio files, video footage, financial records, communications, intercepts, being distributed through encrypted networks to carefully selected recipients. FBI, Internal Affairs Division, Senate Oversight Committee, 3 major news organizations, every rival crime family with interests conflicting with the Calvettis, a dozen anonymous whistleblower platforms. Maria's phone began vibrating. Then Ellis Brennan's phone, notifications arriving in waves, each one another recipient opening files that would destroy carefully constructed narratives and expose operations meant to stay buried forever. Maria's face went pale as she watched her phone light up. Each notification another nail in the coffin of her 5-year operation. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Her hands scrambled for the phone, but Francesco held her immobilized. She could only watch as her world collapsed in real time. Ellis Brennan was already on his phone, his face the color of concrete. Sir, we have a situation. The Calvetti asset has been compromised. Multiple leaks, yes sir, I understand. He looked at Maria with something between pity and disgust. We're pulling all federal protection immediately. You can't, Maria said, voice rising toward panic. We had an agreement. I gave you everything. You gave us contaminated intelligence from an operation that just went public. Brennan was already moving toward the door. You're on your own. Jeanette stood in the center of chaos, still holding the crystal decanter stained with Nico's blood, watching a master manipulator realize she'd been outmaneuvered by a waitress with nothing to lose. Maria's eyes found hers across the penthouse. The hatred there was pure enough to burn. This isn't over, Maria said, voice shaking with rage. Francesco released her, stepping back with calculated precision. Yes, he said simply. It is. Outside, sirens were already approaching. Not federal vehicles this time, local police, responding to tips about criminal activity at Seraphim Tower, armed with evidence that had just flooded their systems. We need to leave, Jeanette said. Now. They disappeared through the service entrance 60 seconds before the first patrol cars arrived, leaving Maria Calvetti alone in her white marble sanctuary, surrounded by the wreckage of her perfect plan. 6 weeks later, sunset painted Francesco's estate terrace in shades of amber and gold. Jeanette stood at the railing, watching gardens transform in the fading light, a glass of wine in her hand that she'd actually learned to appreciate. The world had moved on with brutal efficiency. Maria Calvetti was awaiting trial on 17 federal charges. Her media empire collapsed, her family connections severed. The Calvetti organization had publicly disavowed her, a lie everyone recognized but no one challenged. Ellis Brennan had resigned in disgrace. 3 senators faced ethics investigations, and Jeanette Stevens had been quietly cleared of all charges, after testimony from multiple sources confirmed she'd been an unwitting witness, not a willing participant. Keisha was back at Columbia, scholarship intact, protected by security so subtle she barely noticed anymore. She called every Sunday, her voice carrying less fear each time. "You're thinking too much," Francesco said, emerging with his own wine glass. He'd traded suits for something more casual, still expensive, still tailored, but without the armor. "Occupational hazard," Jeanette replied. "Waitresses spend a lot of time watching other people live their lives." "About that." Francesco leaned against the railing. "Dante's retiring. Moving to Greece. Which means I need a new director of intelligence." Jeanette's heart stuttered. "You're offering me Dante's job. I'm offering you a position that plays to your actual strengths instead of wasting them on wine lists." His expression was serious, devoid of manipulation. "You'll be trained by the best analysts in the business. You'll have resources most intelligence agencies would kill for. And you'll never have to be invisible again." The word hung between them, invisible. The armor she'd worn for years, the survival strategy that had kept her safe and small, and perpetually on the margins of other people's stories. "I don't know the first thing about running intelligence operations," she said quietly. "You identified a 5-year infiltration operation in 2 days using nothing but observation and instinct." Francesco's smile was slight but genuine. "Everything else is just training." Jeanette looked out at the estate, the gardens, the fountain, the walls that represented security instead of imprisonment. She thought about her tiny apartment, her waitress uniform in a closet she'd never returned to, the life where her greatest skill was being forgettable. Then she thought about standing in that penthouse, pressing send, watching Maria Calvetti's world collapse because a nobody waitress had refused to stay invisible. "Yes," she said, the word carrying weight and certainty. "I accept." Francesco extended his hand. She shook it, feeling the moment crystallize into something permanent. The sun dropped below the horizon. Estate lights came on automatically, illuminating the terrace in warm gold. Jeanette stood in that light, her face visible, her presence undeniable, no longer hiding in the margins of someone else's story. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't afraid of being seen. She was ready to be visible. And that's how a waitress who started the night just trying to pay her rent ended up as the director of intelligence for one of the most powerful organizations in the country. Jeanette went from invisible to unstoppable all because she refused to look away when it mattered most. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps us bring you more stories like this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We drop new Mafia romance thrillers 5 times a week, and trust me, the next one is even more intense than this. Drop a comment and let me know, what was your favorite moment? Was it when Jeanette first slipped Francesco the note? When she figured out Maria's location? Or when she hit send and watched Maria's entire world collapse? Let me know below. And if you're craving another intriguing story, check out the video I'm about to put on your screen. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.